Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are in the world. Luckily, today it's afternoon for us here in India. Welcome to the Unboxing AI webinar series by CARPL. For those of you who don't know what CARPL is, I would be very surprised if there is anybody out there who doesn't know who we are, but still, for those of you who don't know what CARPL is, we are your friendly neighborhood AI platform. We help radiologists, healthcare providers, CMOs, CIOs navigate this complex ecosystem of AI applications, clinical AI applications, by serving as the middle layer, a single user interface, a single data channel, a single procurement channel for all of your AI. We are the world's largest AI marketplace, 135 solutions. We are the only FDA and now CE approved AI platform out there. We are also HSA approved, which brings us to our guest today. Uh, Today is episode number 24, and we are joined by our close friend, associate, partner, Lynette Fong. Lynn, I think I first met Lynn almost 2 years ago, and
Mm.
she is like this powerhouse of energy. Uh, she serves as the chief operating officer at AdvaPacs. Um, has had a very interesting career, spanning different types of healthcare IT applications, which we'll go through for sure. And in short, Lynette is somebody who doesn't know it, but has inspired a lot of us at Carpel uh, by just her ability to brute force work through through situations. So I'm not going to embarrass you more, Lynn. Thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you
Thanks.
for being our first experiment. On the Southeast Asia APAC series of the Unboxing AI webinar. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Vidura. Thanks so much for having me here.
Cool. So Lynn, as I was telling you before, we started, we like to make this a lot more about you and
Mhm.
less about Adva, about Kapil, etc. Of course, we will shamelessly pitch our respective companies, I'm sure. But so I'd love for you to share a little bit of your background, professionally, like where did you study? What was like your entire journey, and how do you end up at a cloud pack startup?
Okay. So a lot of people think I'm a doctor because of what we do, and actually, my parents are very traditional Chinese. So my dad's dream is for me to be a doctor. Even today, he says, "Do you want to go and do a PhD or take MSAT?" But I just didn't have the passion at the time to be a doctor, so I studied engineering. So I'm actually an engineer by my degree. And I started my career as a graduate at ResMed. So always been in medical devices. And I think I got the job there because I did my thesis with them. So it kind of helped probably. And my role there was actually in R&D or in product development, doing validation and verification of a very complex product. But I was very grateful. I was only there for a year, but very grateful because I learned so much and I had a lot of really good
ResMed is the
people.
ventilator company, right?
Yeah, so
Yeah,
sleep apnea
yeah, yeah,
and it's
yeah.
interesting because the chairman of ResMed at the time was also the chairman of the school. So you learn about sleep apnea from like the very beginning throughout your degree because I did biomedical engineering so as
Yeah.
well. Um, so unfortunately, I was only there for 1 year because at the time I graduated was like around the GFC, so quite difficult for companies to have permanent headcount. And I managed to get a job in New South Wales state government. So New South Wales is one of the
What is the GFC, Lynn? Sorry.
global financial crisis.
Oh, okay. I didn't know it had a
Yeah,
acronym.
yeah. It's like this is before your time because you're so young.
Yes,
Uh,
of course. I'm just 29.
exactly. Um, And so I joined state government, and I didn't actually know that they hired engineers, but I actually joined a department of like what they call electromedical engineers, but it's part of like a whole department of like all the different types of engineers. So mechanical, electrical, hydraulic, and our job was basically we bid against other private companies for government projects. So building hospitals, building different things, which is where I started learning how to, procure. I did all the procurement for medical imaging equipment, but I also project managed like building hospitals. So I was involved in quite a lot of redevelopments in Australia or in New South Wales. You get given $91 million to spend on, for fixed equipment and stuff. It's not too bad.
Yeah, there was no AI
um,
at the time, unfortunately, right, Lindsay?
no, there wasn't. Yeah, but at the time, people were starting to go digital. So I had installed like 10 digital hybrid operating theaters. So
Okay.
trying to make everything all connected. So it was already starting to go down that way. Um, and I actually really enjoyed my time there because there was just so many different types of work. And even though it was government, it was very dynamic and very fast paced. And I had really good bosses and mentors. And I think that's always really key in your career. Then I left to join Philips because in the back of my mind, my mom is like, you should never work in government for too long. And I was talking to a colleague one day, and he was 51 at the time, and he was telling me about his interview for this job. Like, so we were doing the same job, but he had been there for a lot longer, and I didn't realize that he has only had one job his whole life. And we were doing the exact same thing, and I was like, I cannot do this for 30 years. So so I left and I went and worked for Philips. So when I worked for Philips, my role was I'm quite good at processes. I like structure. I like making things efficient. So I was brought in to help streamline their sales operations process, and then I moved to procurement because that's what I did. And then after a couple of years, I left because I started my own business actually. So before I joined AdvaHealth, I ran my own consulting firm, but I basically helped small to medium enterprises bid for bid for tenders because my previous experience, I called all the tenders, and then at Philips, I answered all the tenders. And then I also helped companies just implement new processes, structure, and things like that. Which is where, so I actually met my CEO, Alan McCarthy, at Philips when he was CEO of Philips Australia New Zealand. And when I was, as part of my consulting work, he had already gone back to his private radiology business, and they asked me to help them with some, writing some papers to submit to the ADIA, to Australian Diagnostic Imaging Association, and
Yeah.
stuff like that. And one day they asked me to come in and help them, manage their radiology support team. So basically, what I did was I went in and I fixed the processes, built the processes, utilizing their systems, and managed their teleradiology process. And then I eventually did business development for that. So that's
So
how I
this was
actually
this was
know.
at QScan.
So this is at Alpenglow that was bought by Keyscan. That's
Ah,
correct.
okay.
Yeah,
Got
yeah.
it.
So as you know, most of my team from the people who started at the health, we're actually all from Alpenglow. So I've known them for now 10 years, and I've known Alan for like 12 years, which must be a good thing, right? If we're all still together. Um, and and then so I successfully built, obviously not by myself, but with the team. I built a really good team, really good processes, and I think that's going really well. And they sold for quite good. I think they were happy with the outcome, the shareholders. And I guess, the first thing that happens when you sell into a corporate is the shared services, you leave, and we decided to start AdvaHealth together. And primarily that's driven because of our previous experience being the customer, like being the consumer. We found that there isn't really a lot of software that is truly agile, is truly dynamic, and really cares about, bettering outcomes in a streamlined way and not be completely expensive. Like, healthcare is already very difficult for a lot of places, a lot of countries, and then the vendors now, like not now, but the experience we had with vendors was always very challenging. So we wanted to kind of like break kind of traditional mold and And that's how we got into AdvaHealth, really.
Interesting. And so why PACS?
So I'm not sure if you know, but when we started, so when I first met you, we actually had other products. So we started
Mhm.
in products that we were quite good at because of our teleradiology experience. So something like a DICOM router, or we started building some other things. And then we decided PACS, and I can't really remember why, but I do remember the day. We were having a strategy meeting. It was like a 4-hour meeting. And I think we were just frustrated with like just what was available and our experience with all the different things. And we go, you know what? All the PAC systems out there, there's no true like cloud native that we found that is easily accessible to people. And then
Mhm.
that's when we decided to build PACS.
So what does that mean, Lynn? So I'm assuming that everybody who's tuned in today knows what PACS is. But what is cloud native PACS? Like how is that different from like regular?
Okay. So actually I've learned in the last 12 months or so, I've actually learned that not a lot of people actually understand the true meaning of cloud native PACS, right? So if we assume that everybody understands what PACS is, so the traditional model everyone is very used to is basically you're storing your images on a piece of hardware, whether it's sitting under your desk or sitting in a data center somewhere or in a server room. Then the next step is basically taking that box and hosting it in the cloud. So people will say that's cloud-based PACS. You'll hear
Yeah,
that quite a lot.
exactly. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And then the next step is cloud native PACS, and that's how when we built our software, the infrastructure behind it is embedded with the cloud solution, and therefore that's why primarily I think one of the, and I could be so wrong about this, but I do know that the way we store our the way our software works is based like it's object oriented. So block storage is typically what other things are. So for example, like Dropbox or Google Drive or even iCloud, you pay for like 50 gigs of data, right? And you might only use 40 gigs. So that's called block storage, but you still have to pay for 50. And if you need more, you still have to ask for more. Whereas with us, because it's object oriented and because the nature of it is we're able to do that because it's cloud native, we can actually just have, if you use 10 gigs, you pay 10. You use 10.5, you pay 10.5. And
Hmm.
this lets us actually. I had a lot of people come up to me. One CIO of a hospital in Malaysia said to me, you can't put cloud and cost effective in the same sentence. And that's when I turned around and said, I challenge you, I can. And the only reason we can is because of the cloud native nature of our software.
But Lynn, tell me one thing, so
Mm,
this whole idea of cloud versus on-prem, uh,
mm,
and even I oscillate between, what the CIO said, right? Like, is cloud truly cost effective, or is it, just fancier? So, it seems cost effective. So my question is, I'm assuming it would have to be a multi-tenant system for
that's
this
correct.
cost effectiveness to work out, right?
Yes.
So when you have, say, a CIO who you are pitching to,
Hmm.
and this is for those on the call, this is probably cloud sales 101. So when you're pitching to a CIO and you ask them, and you tell them that, hey, this is a multi-tenant system, and there is data from hospital ABC and data from hospital XYZ going into the same instance. Uh,
Mm,
how do you allay their fears around, oh, that means these guys are going to be able to see my data and these guys are going to be able to see my data? And like, how do you handle that situation?
yeah. So because I'm not very technical, even though I studied engineering,
No, that's
the
why
way,
that's why
yeah,
I'm asking
yeah,
purely from a sales
yeah,
perspective, right?
yeah.
Like, what is the answer you give for that?
So actually, nobody actually uses the word multi-tenanted when they speak to me. They seem to only use it when they talk to Ben, my CTO. But
Okay.
you are right. Most of the time, people associate like, because we use Amazon, right? So AWS, they associate like, oh, my stuff is going to be in the same bucket as everybody else. And it's quite simple. You just bring it back to like just like people's bank accounts, people's Google Drives, people's iClouds, right? You're
Mm.
all part of the bigger cloud, but you all have accounts. So actually, your customer doesn't have this customer doesn't have access to customer B's data,
Mm.
same as they don't have access to customer C. And then when you kind of put it like something in a practical, real world situation, then they go, "Oh yeah, that makes sense."
I see. So essentially, the answer in one line is, do you use Gmail?
Yeah,
And if the answer to that is yes, then you say that, hey, I also use Gmail, but that doesn't mean that I can access all of your emails and nor can you access mine. So,
that's
uh,
correct.
nice, I get it. So,
And I guess it's also in separate. I think it's also like in separate buckets within the the tenant, right?
okay, so there is like that, not exactly physical, but uh, that level of
Separation.
separation. It's not that it's one
No,
database of
and
like ABC,
no,
ABC,
that's
ABC,
correct.
and then you have XYZ, XYZ, and then ABC. It's two separate ones. Oh, that helps. So we have a question from somebody who doesn't want us to know their name.
Mhm.
Uh, how do you plan to bringing out cloud benefits to low and middle income countries, especially where internet connectivity may be an issue? So I don't know if you face that at
Yeah,
your.
actually, so sometimes I don't always say like our product is better than on
Can you
premise,
tell us
but
where all you're deployed, Lynn,
yeah.
before you go
So
into that?
currently we're in Australia, we're in Hong Kong, we're in Singapore, we're in the Philippines,
Okay.
right? So this question is perfect for like the Philippines because
Yep.
their internet is not great, and they often have a lot of typhoons and floods. So I would say that not every situation cloud is right. So I always say to my customers, and I'm quite honest and open. I'm like, it's great because you only need internet, but it's it's also not great because you need internet, right? So if you don't have internet, it's bad. So for low to middle income type or emerging type markets, as I call them, there are we haven't completely ignored them, but we also haven't completely gone there. Philippines, their internet is reasonable. When you look at our cloud packs, there are two components to it, right? There's a component where you're uploading the studies to the cloud, and then there's a component of being able to access the studies. And they're quite separate. People who access them are
Mm-hmm.
also quite separate. So in terms of like uploading the studies to the cloud, if they have a low bandwidth, we actually have some rules in place within the PACS that allows, prioritization of studies. For example, if you're in a hospital and you've got emergency studies, you want the CT to go in before 50 X-rays. So in the past, in our Alpenglow, when we were working, we worked with a lot of rural hospitals, and even though people don't believe this, internet in Australia is pretty bad, especially out in the country, right? So we would often send like 20 X-rays to 20 X-rays, and it would take forever to upload. Like it's 4 megs per second, and then oh no, like a CT a trauma comes in with a motorbike accident, and they've got a CT. So what they do, the radiographer has to go and delete all the studies that are uploading the
Oh.
X-rays, and then make sure the CT and just wait for the CT to go through, and then after that go back and resend all the X-rays. So we've had experience with that. What we've done is actually we have rules that you can put in place to automatically prioritize certain things, and then we also have fail safes inside our pack so that if it fails, it will just retry and we'll retry. So I always say to people, it'll probably be a little bit slow to upload, but it will still be there. Now, the good thing is once it's in the cloud, you can access it
Mm-hmm.
anywhere, right? And one of the things about emerging markets, so I've been talking to like people in Papua New Guinea, why they like this is because they can also allows them to get access to radiologists overseas. So they don't need to be reported in the country, or they could be a province in the Philippines, like out in the villages, and then the radiologist could be in Manila where the internet is pretty stable. Now, the benefit of cloud in places like this, and my customer actually said this, and he joked about it because they had some really bad flooding in Manila. And they said, AdvaPax is typhoon proof and flood proof. Because most of the times when you have typhoon and you have floods, the hospital's closed, and
Yeah.
either your hospital is destroyed or your server room is destroyed, or they close anyway and you can't work, and they go, but it's okay, the radiologist can still work from home.
Yeah. No, I think that
So
is a extremely interesting insight, Lynn. I've personally never thought about it. That frankly, what matters is the upload speed, right?
yes.
Because you can assume that the person reporting the scan is in an area with relatively stable internet. And generally,
Mm,
upload speeds are far lesser than download speeds, anyways. Like download speeds, even in a developing country with like 3G,
yeah,
are fairly good, right?
yeah,
It's not
yeah,
low. It's like
yeah,
couple of MB
yeah.
per second you can easily get. So that is, yeah, that's pretty interesting. As opposed to having to have a VPN into the uh, s- local packs, right? Where then
Yes, yeah,
you're essentially downloading at the upload speed. So
yes,
that
correct.
is, yeah, that's
Yeah.
interesting. So,
We also compress the data when we're uploading it,
yeah,
so that makes it smaller. And so we're trying to do that. That doesn't just reduce the upload speed, but that's also our way of trying to reduce costs for the customer.
yeah. No, that is, yeah, no, that's pretty cool. It's so obvious, but very interesting. So tell me one thing, as you go around, we've seen you've been going to a lot of conferences, you've been carrying the CARPL, uh, you know, flag, if I may say so, around, and we have been shamelessly reposting your pictures all over.
Very
Uh,
glad, very glad.
what, uh, what, what were the last three conferences you went to, and what are people talking about AI at these three conferences, and where does CARPL fit into that picture?
So last three. So I was I can't remember exactly last three because I've had so many,
I
but
can tell
I would
you.
say
I think you were in
okay,
Malaysia, Vietnam, and Singapore.
yes, okay, and a few
I
more here and
think.
there. But okay, so um, yeah, I was also in Bali and yeah, a few other places. But okay, so my most recent one was Singapore,
Yeah.
and the reason why I was so excited about our partnership, even though we've met, like ages ago, I think we're at a position now where I'm so proud of the product. I'm so confident with the product, and I'm very passionate about what we do, right? But I just felt like there was something missing where as like a solution to the customer. And
Mm.
my experience, particularly in Southeast Asia, has been that people really embrace AI. Every conference I went to, like before these last three, before our partnerships, even when we'd already been talking about it, like I went to AOCR, so the Asia Oceanic Congress of Radiology. I was stuck between Lunit and like a huge mind ray distributor, so I had a lot of foot traffic. But they would come up to me and say, do you have AI? And I'm like, well, no, I can't integrate, but they're not interested, right?
Mm.
And that's why I was like really, really excited when we finally got integrated. Like we have our partnership and we did our first like launch party at Malaysia because Southeast Asia, they're so excited about it. They just love the idea that this is just going to make their life easier. It helps
Mm.
them grow. It helps them work more efficiently. So people, they love I have this banner of all your different algorithms, the body type, and different brands, and the fact that you guys have over 125 now, I think, just give and it's so in line and so aligned with our culture where we want to give the customer flexibility, right? So
Mm.
this gives my customers flexibility, and so talking to people at these conferences, they just really excited, and the fact that you have so many just blows them away.
So, and that's good to know. Uh, but Lynn, like, and this is like coming from a question that Sarthi is asking. Yeah, I mean, obviously we
Mm.
know him maybe too well. Uh, so, how do people ask about regulation? Like, do they ask about FDA clearances? Like, especially in like the smaller countries, uh, or are they more about, like, give me whatever you have, I will figure out whether it works for me or not.
So far in so I would say Singapore and Malaysia are a little bit more mature in
Yeah,
terms of healthcare and in radiology.
yeah.
Singapore in particular, everybody, my experience is they care about FDA.
Mm-hmm.
Then if you do CE, that's great. Um,
Mm.
and then the bigger groups will care about HSA, for example, for Singapore.
Yeah.
Um, but the general consensus is if you have FDA and CE mark, they're willing to talk to you, and then they'll say, well, what are you going to do about our country regulation if it exists, right?
Mm. Yeah, because
Places,
SAMD, software as a medical device is not there in all countries. Like India got it a couple of
mm,
years ago. Till before,
yeah.
you could just sell any software, right? You didn't really
I would
need.
say like countries like even the Philippines, they say they have the Philippines FDA, but it's very difficult for them to understand software as a medical device. And
Yeah.
so if you target like the private area sector in the Philippines, for example, that kind of country, they're less worried. If you have FDA and CE, they're quite trusting. But when you start talking about like Philippines FDA, even they themselves, when I've gone to them about software as a medical device, they're quite confused.
Hmm. Cool. So, Lynn, we're going to take one last question. We have like celebrities in town. This is from Jake Fishman. Sorry, this is close enough. It's Jake from Signify. Uh,
Yeah.
so he asks, flexibility. One sec, where did it go? Yeah, flexibility in AI across imaging IT is important, but do you find some providers just want a vendor like AdvaHealth to tell them what algorithms to use and are actually looking for a more curated AI solution than blanket access to an overwhelming amount of algorithms? So essentially, when you show somebody the list,
Mm,
do they just get paralyzed and use us to figure out what they want to use and then
yeah.
maybe directly go to those guys, or do you think people appreciate having that large menu of options?
So my experience so far talking to people is first they are blown away, so temporarily paralyzed. Then they ask me, what should I use, right? And I go, actually, I have no idea. Absolutely no idea. I'm not clinical at all. But what I appreciate is then your team, right? Like, and I always encourage and foster the conversation between your team and the customer, and the customer appreciates being this kind of time, like understanding the workflow they do, and I think they embrace the flexibility because they're not locked in. So they're often worried with going direct to AI companies. Is like once you've committed to them, you've integrated with them. It's a big commitment. You have to use it all the time, otherwise it doesn't make sense. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's actually, and yeah, that's precisely our pitch, right? Like we make AI switching cost zero. So, you can always use the best AI at that specific, for that specific patient at that specific
Mm,
point in time. So thanks for
yeah.
that. And maybe last question, we have from Gaurav Arora. So Gaurav asks, how do you manage objections around pricing when you add AI to the mix, right? We were talking just before.
Yeah. Yeah. It's quite interesting because I have had very little objection to
Hmm.
adding AI pricing. So people are very aware and actually just accept that the fact that a PACS is a PACS, and I think the traditional pricing model of PACS already, you pay for PACS, then you pay for licenses, then you pay for support, and you want this new feature, you pay for this. So we already don't like are so different. We don't have any of those things. But for them, they understand that AI is actually not my solution. And I think just because of the exposure they have, the amount of exposure they got for AI in the market now, they actually are aware that it's a separate cost. They don't even argue with it. They do
Hmm.
argue about what it should cost, but that I leave to the CARPL experts. But they honestly they just accept that it's an additional cost, just like not just AI. We are also like voice recognition, that because
Yeah.
we haven't built our own, like the big providers, even nuance, they kind of just accept it.
No, I think that's a great note to end on, that, folks are not giving too much objections around the existence of pricing, but more around
Mm,
maybe what the price should be. So yeah, no, we try to end on time, Lynn. Otherwise, I can keep
That's
talking to you
great.
all day long. But thank you so much. Thank you to everybody who joined. Means a lot. And I'll see you next week.
Yes.
I will be tuning in from Australia. So that'll be fun.
Thanks,
Hopefully
everyone.
with Lynn around.
Yeah.
See you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Viduro. See you next week.
See
Take
you.
care.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.